Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we kick off an Ed Wood retrospective with the director's most famous work, Plan 9 from Outer Space, from Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media. With me from Austin is Tony Savaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, currently published by Comixology. He is a Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the Pen America Fellowship. Hello, Drew.
Why do I always get these spook details? Monsters, bodies.
And finally in Denver, somebody who's been looking forward to this, I think, more than any of us. Color commentary from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. All right. I feel like this is a film that needs no introduction, but nevertheless, here it is. Plan 9 from Outer Space is a 1959 American independent science fiction horror film written, produced, and directed and edited by Edward D. Wood Jr. and it stars a legitimate Hollywood star, Gregory Walcott, Mona McKinnon, Tor Johnson, and Vampira herself, Mila Nurmi, and narrated by Criswell of Criswell Predicts. It also includes a number of scenes of Bela Lugosi, posthumously, because those scenes were shot shortly before Lugosi died by Wood, who bet that he could possibly be able to use whatever he shot.
Well, he didn't die by, like Ed Wood did not kill him.
No. But before he died.
Yes.
The film storyline.
He died by wood.
He died by wood. Yeah, he was not stabbed through the heart by a wooden stake.
The storyline of Plan 9 from Outer Space concerns extraterrestrials who plan to raise the dead as a means of stopping humanity from creating a doomsday weapon that could destroy the universe. And that is called Plan 9 from Outer Space. So this movie didn't do very well initially, and it ran on TV a lot, and then suddenly it took off like wildfire because it was featured in two very important books. One, the Golden Turkey Awards by the Medfed brothers, and also Cult Films by Danny Peary. And both of those came out right around 80-81. And at that point, all of a sudden, the film sort of took off as it had been voted in the Medved book the worst film of all time, and I think it's worth discussing what the hell that means and whether that's even true. And we'll go from there. So let's get our opening thoughts on. I cannot believe I feel dwarfed in the presence of greatness. I can't believe we're discussing this. Opening thoughts. Julia, Tony, Drew, you think I'm being ironic?
I'm going to go on record on saying that this is the only film Jason has ever said that about in all of our films that we've watched.
That's why I laugh.
This is the pinnacle.
Yeah.
Now.
Well, I mean, no, it's true. We've discussed, Silence of the Lambs and The Exorcist, and
The Shining,
and Shining, and Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Fine films, all. But I've never felt so intimidated as having to discuss Plan 9 from Outer Space. So, okay, let's go Julia, Tony, Drew, and then I'll go Julia. Opening thoughts. Have you ever seen Plan 9 before?
I did. I saw it a while back, probably right after I saw Ed Wood, which I currently have on the screen and paused with a beautiful shot of Bill Murray. I wanted to see what this whole business was about, that Ed Wood was about, which I think the film Ed Wood probably caused a lot of people to watch this movie and Glenn or Glenda and several others. But anyway, yes, this is not the worst film of all time. It is also not the greatest film. I do not feel dwarfed by its greatness. But
I didn't say it was dwarfed by its greatness. I just said I'm intimidated.
Kind of did.
I feel dwarfed by it, but it's not greatness. It's something.
Okay. Well, fortunately, this is recorded, so we'll go back and play it back and see what you actually said. Anyway, no, I've been looking forward to it because it is so iconic. It's just,
yeah.
And so, yes, I would say that this film could be not terrible if they just had made a few changes. Didn't have to be expensive changes. I think that there are some great parts to it. I think it's actually pretty hilarious, sometimes deliberately, sometimes not deliberately. And then there are some things that are just so confusing and weird. The fact that he has Bela Lugosi in it because of his name, to try to draw some attention to it, I guess, is really strange because the role is completely unnecessary, and in fact he has somebody else stand in for Bella after he dies, and that's just weird because it doesn't fit and it's odd. So I kind of think that throws it all out of whack. But the actual story of the people from outer space is quite amusing, and if this was a project that a college freshman had put together, then it would be really great. I mean, you'd be like, wow, that's pretty ingenious how you use these things. But for a professional film, of course, it fell short in a few spots, but I really enjoy watching it. I think it's very entertaining. I don't think it's boring at all, which is why it's not one of the worst. I don't think it's the worst film because it's not boring. I think to me, for a film to be bad, it has to not only be low quality, but also just boring. And this one is not that.
Absolutely. Okay, fair. Tony, I mean, what would you add to what are your opening thoughts on Plan 9?
I think it's definitely a misnomer that it's the worst movie of all time. I think I would say a lot of people agree with that. I think the people who don't agree with that, in my opinion, may not enjoy outsider art. You may not enjoy an indie band that, is trying real hard, but maybe is the best of their instruments, that kind of thing. Like there's a love, and again, I'm all for somebody swinging for the fences. And I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff in here that Wood is trying to convey, and it's budget, and then some of it's how it, like his sensibilities. But there are really huge blockbuster movies that are not as entertaining. Are more nonsensical than this. And I mean, I can't say for sure what would happen if you somehow just told, hey, Ed Wood, here's $100 million or what, you name it. I mean, name a tentpole movie that just didn't really work, right?
Yeah.
And whatever that budget is. I don't know what would have come of that, because there's also, I think, a certain degree of scrappiness that you have to that helps people innovate with the small budget. But as far as themes go and entertainment, and if somebody says, oh, this is the worst movie, are they, you see this theater and people are laughing at the effects or something like that, I would also counter how many people, like, there are a bunch of really forgettable blockbuster movies.
Yes,
but
absolutely. Yeah.
How many people has Vampira like influence? Like the goth scene owes a lot to her presence and her this movie in general, a lot of bits, even to the point where people, we've covered movies that kind of ape the more nonsensical parts of this movie and similar movies of the time, low budget black and white movies. And I think there's a lot of really forgettable movies. This one's not. So if you're gonna level that at a movie, I don't know. I think you're really cutting something short on exactly its influence. So maybe it's because of that it would have been relegated to super duper low cult following at the time. But the jokes I think on the people who decided to give it guff. Yeah. And not that it's like this huge work of art that you can't, talk about its faults. But I would rather watch hundreds of movies with this amount of heart.
Yeah, I agree.
Than I would some blockbuster movies that I've seen that I am still wondering, like, what the hell? Why did you do this? Other than the fact you took the money,
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Something that you come out of. There's a couple of ways that something like that can happen. There's ones that you come out of, and you literally instantly forget what it was that you watched, and others that you come out of and you're deeply offended. There's just something wrong with it. This movie is neither of those things, to my knowledge. But let's find out if Drew thinks differently. Drew, what are your thoughts on your opening thoughts on Plan 9 from Outer Space?
So I will say that starting out, we have a difficult task ahead of ourselves because this movie is almost impossible to review. So much ink and words and everything has been spilled on this particular. Yeah. I will say I agree with everything that Julia said, and I agree with everything that that Tony just said. I think that this is the best way that I have ever heard, and I wish I could remember where I'm getting this because I'm paraphrasing something I read elsewhere.
Okay.
But the best way I've heard Ed Wood's films, this one in particular, talked about is they refer to him as a kind of folk art on cinema. And I think that is accurate. Like, for better or for worse, Ed Wood is an auteur.
Yeah.
Like, you will not mistake one of his movies for anybody else's. He has a style that is unmistakable. He, has a certain cadence to his dialogue. There's actually an Ed Wood aesthetic, which, as Tony has pointed out, that people have gone out of their way to trying to ape. And some of it, whether by accident or not, looks kind of cool. Like the scenes of Tor Johnson and Vampira, like going through like the very, very false looking, Gothic cemetery. That's an iconic shot, and it's cool looking, in a Halloween haunted house kind of way. A lot of
especially the one of him coming up out of the grave. I think that was awesome.
Well, he's a great looking zombie. I would say, like, I would put him up against anything in any of the Romero films. Like, he's actually legitimately kind of creepy looking. And, to that point, I actually think this movie could, people might throw digital tomatoes at me for saying this. You could see this movie as a kind of precursor to Night of the Living Dead with some of the imagery in this. Romero's obviously a lot more talented than Wood. I'm not trying to say that, their chops are exactly like, but Ed Wood is an interesting filmmaker. And I think, like Tony said, I absolutely think he does get the last laugh. However, and when we did the Hangout episode, I brought this up, and I'm bringing it up again because I said I would elaborate on it. I do have kind of mixed feelings about the association between him and Bela Lugosi. Not that it's in anyone's particular fault, but the way it's been framed in pop culture because of the Tim Burton film. Bela Lugosi was a fabulous actor, and I'm as anybody who has listened to this podcast know, I hold Bela Lugosi in really high regard, and I feel like it's unfortunate that there is a lot of people that they only associate him with the good movies where he was kind of at the end of his rope. So that, as a Lugosi fan, I do kind of have some mixed feelings about these movies with the Lugosi-ness of it, but especially because Bela Lugosi really isn't in the film, as Julia pointed out, but is a fun movie to watch. Like, I would much rather watch this than Fast and the Furious in space, which apparently is going to be a thing. I would much rather watch this than, so many other things, because it's not bland. It's very kind of dreamy in its way. And I have a good time revisiting it. And actually, I took it in. This is, if there's any indicator that a movie has some sort of stamp on cinematic, people have remade it. And believe it or not, there is not one but two remakes of this, which I took in preparation for that. So people, at least like conceptually, they like Plan 9 enough to redo it. So
thank you for your sacrifice, Drew.
It was please. I said I watch so many horror movies. You have no idea. Anyway, that is my weird stream of consciousness. Lean into this.
I think that's really great, and I think one of the first topics we're going to do, if not the first topic, because we may as well talk about, or early on, will be Lugosi and his complicated history with this, because your attitude is shared by a number of important people, not least of which is Stephen King, who had zero time for people's enthusiasm for Ed Wood back when he wrote Danse Macabre. I don't know if Stephen King's attitude has changed in the intermittent 40 years since he wrote that book, but at the time, Stephen King was just like, he was fed up with hearing about people enjoying this. He felt like Ed Wood had exploited Lugosi and like, in other words, King came from the whole other perspective. He was like, no, I got no time for this. This is awful. So,
and I'm not quite as salty about it as that.
Right. I'm just saying there's a whole continuum of feelings about all that. But before we do all that, I just wanted to say my opening thought is this movie is a sort of a perfect test to me of the question of what the hell are movies for? Because we were talking recently to the guy in Rue Moore, it was Mark Benedict, and he was asking us these questions. And one of the answers that I had was, I don't know what any of this stuff is for anymore, but I know that a movie is a work of art, and art is intended to make me think of things and make me watch things and make me engage with it in some way. And and I know that all of that is happening as I take this art in, and therefore the movie is successful. What else do you want? And I've just, maybe it's just the fact that I've been doing this a long time now, right? But I am capable of saying this movie, Plan 9 from Outer Space, is amateurish in all of these ways and indicates a certain amount of just laziness in a lot of ways. And having said that, there's all of these images that I can walk away with, and that's great. And so to me, the art is, successful in a way that a lot of other pieces, like, say, whatever that most recent sequel to Independence Day was, are not.
Well,
and yeah, go ahead.
I think you can see that in all art.
Yeah.
You can go see an amateur, let's quote unquote amateurish painting, right?
Right.
That affects you. And
Yeah.
you can tell that maybe the skill, what we think of traditional skill, isn't there.
Right.
And then you can look at a extremely well rendered piece of art in a motel or hotel lobby that is, by all accounts, looks exactly, it does exactly what it is, but it can be a bland piece of commercial art.
In fact, it's intended to be bland in that
exactly.
Yeah.
And so it could even be an interesting landscape, let's say a new Transformers movie. While it has all these bits, the last one that I saw, less coherent than this movie, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't know.
But it's done for it's a piece of commercial art, right?
Very good.
That I think of. But, depending on, and that's why cult movies are cult movies, right? Like, you tend to seek out the oddballs I think a lot of people who like cult movies feel they're on the same wavelength as a lot of outsider art.
Yeah.
And that's why it is what it is. That's why we feel this way.
And I do think Ed Wood made the kind of movies he, maybe he would have liked more money to make with them, but like, this is a guy that was in the science fiction. He was in the monster movies. He had coming at it, from a particular perspective. And even this movie, like, even though it doesn't say it in the most eloquent way, he was trying to say something with it.
He's making the movie he wants to make. He's not somebody you're like, hey, Eddie, we're going to give you some money to direct a movie as long as you get it in for 4 days and $15,000. And he goes off and he makes some Boston Strangler kind of movie and turns it in. In theory, he could have done that. He doesn't want to do that. He's doing some wacko shit.
That's why I love, like, those Hollywood movies. You have people who don't have the means to make Die Hard.
Yes.
But holy crap, are they going to try to make Die Hard and Commando and whatever movie you name?
Right.
They don't have power for half the time.
Right.
Like, they don't have electricity. They're working on laptops that are, and like floods have happened, all this stuff.
So I'm just saying the other day,
holy crap, their movies are so entertaining. And that's what I think every time I watch this and I think about that kind of like worst movie ever made, I think about it totally differently.
Let's address that one up front. Worst movie ever made. Tell me, Tony, real quick. Worst movie you ever seen? What?
Oh, I don't want to go into that.
Okay.
I can't even. I mean, I couldn't even really pick, but
okay.
What?
How many worst movies up to now? Because there's Plan 9 from Outer Space. There's Troll 2. There's The Room.
You can get so much worse than Troll 2.
But I feel like that's like almost an advertising ploy for weird movies.
Exactly.
Now.
Well, and now we have the world of ironic filmmaking where people make movies deliberately. So that's thrown it all off.
Well, and for me, the problem is that I have a very selective memory. So if I didn't like it, I forget it immediately. Like, I'm just like, I have no room for this in my brain. So I have no idea what the worst films are because I don't remember watching them. Like, if you were to play back for me a podcast episode where I go, this is the worst movie I've ever seen, I would believe that was the worst one, but I don't remember at all.
We've actually watched very little that I would count. I don't even really, to be honest, I asked Tony that question, but to be honest, I don't even know what the answer is because.
But if you're going to say we've watched very little that's crap, I'm going to have to disagree with you there.
First of all, once again, we have to give lip service to all of the people who work super hard
Yes,
on all of
that's
these
Tony.
pieces
That's
of work.
Tony's
Well,
line.
Well, I mean, also like I somebody else had said like they had a professor that wanted people to phrase things in, and I can't remember. It's just one of those things I scrolled through on Twitter, and their professor said, "I would prefer you say this doesn't work."
Right.
Or this doesn't work for me. And I
Doesn't
definitely
work
have
for me.
movies that don't work at all for me. In fact, there's one or two. There's one in particular that I saw a few years ago that I really wish I'd walked out on. And
I'm sorry.
I don't walk out on movies usually because, again, I want to try to see where the director was going.
Nobody in their right mind would walk out on Plan 9 from Outer Space. I don't
But
think.
man,
Yeah,
oh
it's
man,
just-
there was
it's
at least
interesting.
one. There's at least one that I wish I had, and that movie really, it's just so the opposite of everything I personally enjoy. And man,
I'm really sorry.
But I don't
that
know
you
if
had to go
that's
through
the
that.
worst. But I don't know if that's the worst movie because I had friends who they love that movie.
Right. Well,
they
that's
think
a
it's the
different
best.
thing, though. I mean, that's like I won't watch like Saw or whatever, and it's not because I think it's bad. I actually don't know if it's good or bad. I'm not going to watch it because it sounds horrible. It's just disgusting. But so that's a personal preference thing. But like, there's movies that are just boring, or there's movies that you're just like, what? I don't even understand what's going on. I'm not going to give this any more of my time.
Yeah. True.
Credit to Wood, and I don't know if this is true or not. I can't verify this, but I have read that his screenplays were actually reasonably good. Like that it was the execution where things started to fall apart.
Well, there's a lot of great bits in here. I mean, if you're gonna kind of sort of riff on Day the Earth Stood Still and come up with a new novel way to add horror to it by resurrecting the dead, I mean, sure thing. That's cool as hell.
Well, somebody made the observation the other day that Ed Wood's screenplay is a screenplay for an extremely expensive movie.
Right. Well, that's what he always did. But it says in the IMDb that Gregory Walcott read the script and said it was the worst script he'd ever read.
That's really
but he signed on anyway. So I love, by the way, that this film is funded by a Baptist church. And in order, as kind of an exchange for them to fund the film, several of the cast members let themselves be baptized, and the head of the group of ministers is one of the grave diggers.
One of the grave diggers.
I think that's hilarious.
You know what what I enjoyed that I'd forgotten was he gives Tor Johnson lines.
Yes.
And I kind of like, so usually because I'm so used to seeing him, he just kind of grunts and does his thing, you know.
Yes.
But he actually, I found myself kind of wanting. I know he would have to be a little bit better than he is in this movie, but I really kind of did want to see more of Tor Johnson as this kind of burly sheriff guy.
The inspector. Can you imagine if
he was like he's not great at it, but he's finally got lines in a movie. And I don't know. It worked for me.
I've never thought about that before, but just imagine that, there had been an extra scene with Tor Johnson sitting with Gregory Walcott smoking a cigar, and Tor Johnson tells something like the Indianapolis speech, 1945.
Like I would watch a, he's got a thick accent, so maybe like an immigrant investigator guy.
I could live with that. Yeah, exactly.
With Tor, because he's always got such a huge presence. I mean, he's a huge guy, so they bill him in these like, hey, lumber around and be imposing, right? And with the contacts and whatever, the stuff they do to his eyes, like he looks really cool. Like it's a kind of cool effect. Like he's pretty scary in parts of this. But I just like his speech, and I had forgotten about that.
I'm a big boy, times. Johnny. Yeah, he's great.
And I just like the idea. Like I wish that was a side movie. I want to see more of that. I don't know.
I would like to see Tor Johnson detective like teaming up with Mike Hammer from Hangout episode.
That would be wow. I don't know how that would work, but I would like to side slip into the universe for that. I could watch that. Oh man,
he would be like
in the water
wrestling moves to take down gangsters.
Yeah,
but
that'd be cool.
One thing I wanted to mention before we went farther, though, because I wanted to record this. We were talking last week, and I think we were actually talking before we recorded. But you brought this up because I had like typed it on Twitter, but it was nothing original. I mean, we've said it before. but it was that people have used this term "so bad it's good" about this movie, and I seriously, I'm not mocking it. People, it could be funny, but I actually don't believe there's any such thing. There's no such thing as "so bad it's good." My real honest belief, and I am nearer to death than I am to my own birth, is there is only the art. There's a continuum of the art and your relation to it. You are either reacting to it or you're repelled by it, and that's all. It's you and the art, and then you die. So
okay. I'm gonna respond to the two things. One is you could easily live to be 100, so you might not be closer to your death than your birth. Just FYI. No, I think that so bad it's good for me means that some things just become delightful because they're so awful. That's what that means to me. But I hear what you're saying. I agree that
So
you
my
come at it from
theory,
your own experience.
my theory on this, just going to more kind of weird films and having the Draft House and going to all of this random, just going to completely random things I'd never thought I would ever see in a theater, right?
Right.
Is I've kind of gotten this theory in my head that part of it is people aren't allowed to necessarily, it's weird to enjoy something that again is cult or outsider for a lot of people. So, or it's fun to laugh at the ineptitude of something.
Right.
Or if something's not as good. And so we have this kind of trend towards an irony. So we have this trend towards, oh, that's imperfect. Let's laugh at it.
Right.
And be dismissive of it. And I think that is the disservice. So it is perhaps amateurish. And it doesn't have polish, but and that's the so bad.
Yeah.
But people have it's kind of become twisted into, and because people have also use that to make movies where irony is the goal. And I dislike that. I've said that many times.
I shouldn't be judging because people can do whatever they want, right?
Well, I don't personally enjoy that. I think that's
the reality.
I mean, like I said, I've said before. I've had a friend who worked on a movie, and they told him the special effects look too good. You have to make them look bad. And to me, that's one of the most solid examples of that kind of thing. So I would like in a world that Tony would prefer, you wouldn't have that because you could just go, are you entertained or not? If you're entertained, cool. Now, I don't like going to the theater where some jerk laughs at everything that doesn't look perfect. Yeah. Oh, look, you can see the wires. Oh, yeah, I get it. And it can ruin. I've been to a few screenings where I went to one screening where people all kind of got it, and then went to another screening where there were just a few people who came in there because they thought that they should be Mystery Science Theater and that they were as funny, and it was cool to ridicule every single thing that isn't perfect. Those screenings are no fun because you aren't engaging with the art in a way. And again, you paid your money, but when you start ruining it for other people, that's kind of sucks. No, but that so bad it's good. It's the same as how I approach guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
Like if you once you're out of kind of peer pressure stage,
right?
Who cares? Just
once you're an adult,
the world is
there's only so many hours in the day. You're going to spend them doing whatever you're going to spend them doing. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Things are kind of bleak, and screw anybody who wants to make you feel bad for. Now, if you're like, hey, you like an artist who kicks puppies or whatever, we have a different. But if that person's actively a terrible person who harms others, I do vote with my money on that one. But as far as hey, there's this pop song that I like, or this movie that I dig that isn't the best movie by somebody's standards, don't even who cares? Just like it. I'm also speaking as somebody who's liked a lot of things that people don't like. Like I said, I'm on the fringe of a lot of fringes, so I kind of got used to that early on. So let's
get specific about the things that people don't like, because I want to talk about this real quick. But one thing that I always admired about my older daughter is that she always, from a very early age, but she would go, no, I'm okay with that effect. She would say this without prompting, because I know what it is that they're trying to get across. In other words, Ed Wood, biographers have pointed out, have always said, yeah, just keep rolling. It's just supposed to be this thing, a suspension of disbelief. Sure. People know what it's supposed to be. And and my daughter was one of those people who was going to roll with that. She was like, yeah, I get it. It's supposed to be a ship. Or I get it. He's supposed to be flying. And then that's fine. And it's fascinating to me that Wood, and this might be the artiste part of all of this, is that he thought that was okay. I don't know why he thought that was okay.
Well, because he
really
got the movie done.
Yeah, I guess so.
And he didn't have the assets to make anything different. And the reality of the situation, you know, and this ties into the so bad it's good thing, is a lot of people who are hypercritical. You can be critical of this, but like you can take it to a point, and but you have to be able to acknowledge somebody could give you the same amount of money that Ed Wood has, and you wouldn't have been able to make a movie that was as entertaining as this.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I look at the one that still, I know I've said it a few times, but the litmus test for me is I got to see Faust on, the silent film.
Yes.
On a big screen with a decent restoration. And I know that it's the big budget movie of its time. But I've watched a bunch of movies that aren't as well executed as Faust.
Right.
100 years later.
Yeah.
So there's something to that. And that's why I always wonder, and I'm not saying anything I've done is better than that or even approaches that. But it fascinated me. That's one where it just clicked and I go, holy crap, 100 years later and I still watch movies that aren't as good as this 100-year-old movie. Like what is the magic? What do you do to put that together?
Yeah.
And that I don't have the answers to that. But that was one that definitely hit me.
Like Glenn or Glenda, which he was hired to do a regular old exploitation film and he made instead an art movie, is full of stuff that seems to be lifted from Faust, by the way. There's devil figures and there's laughing people who are approaching the screen and just all kinds of just like weird phantasmagoric craziness. There's less of that here. This is actually, to be honest, a much more, it's still loopy as heck, and we'll get to it, but this one is less what's the word, surreal than like Glenn or Glenda.
At least not it has surrealness to it, but
there's still a lot of surreality about it. Yeah. So, and in a second, I want to get to the loopy dialogue. Before we do that, let's talk about the suspension of disbelief. So the story here, again, is aliens from outer space are afraid that humans are going to make a really dangerous, universe-destroying bomb. And so they've come to Earth to raise the dead in order to frighten the humans into not making the bomb. Okay.
Right. Because people are too willful. Their souls are too strong.
They have stupid minds. Stupid.
Yes.
Yeah. But their souls are the key.
And the idea is raise the dead and march them on the cities. I love that, by the way. But and we'll get in a second to Bunny Breckenridge, the one who says march them on the cities.
I love Bunny Breckenridge so much.
Yes. I really wish that he were our friend and we could have him over for wine. Honestly,
apparently, Bunny identified as she, or at least that's what.
Oh, really? Well, I didn't know that. Well, we should respect that. So, but when people talk about what's not believable, suspension of disbelief. To begin with, the cockpit. Our main character, Gregory Walcott, is a former Marine airline pilot. And he, when he's flying and he's in his plane, the cockpit set is barely a set. It's like what you would do in like, if we were doing a whole bunch of sketches on a stage and we had to really quickly, bring out some props to be the cockpit set. It's like that. Maybe a little better than that because it has a wall behind it.
No, it's not. I mean, SNL does so much better with just the rollout sets. No, this is not a set. It's just literally a shower. So they had a shower curtain that they used as a shower curtain.
Door. Don't forget there's a door back there. It's not just a curtain. There's a door.
Yeah, and the doorway with a curtain in it. And they have hung a couple of things on the wall, a clipboard and some,
it's like a compass,
like a slide rule type thing, whatever. And that's it. That's the entire set.
Yeah, and each of the pilots has a sort of there's a pole coming out of the floor with a semicircle of wood that they're holding onto, and that just it suggests a cockpit. And let me tell you, when I first watched this movie, and I was in college, I was just rolling with the movie, and I didn't even notice it. I was like, fine, whatever. In other words, my eyes just sort of went over this whole scene. I was like, sure, whatever, it's a plane. I mean, I was like, they're wearing pilots' uniforms. It's a plane.
It feels like a play. I mean, you could easily make this into a play. It would be interesting, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I think even... what's fascinating to me when I watched it this time is I don't know how intentional it is, and perhaps I should read more about the making of the film. But even the voiceover feels like the voiceover would be the subtitles you would see if this were a silent film.
Yeah.
They're almost exactly silent film subtitles. And it's fascinating. It fascinated me because he's taken this kind of idea of that kind of narration. And he turns it's actual narration here. But they're not much different than anything you've seen in a decent silent film.
Right.
The difference is, by this time people have moved on, and so you're much more into the show don't tell is usually the way that you would normally go about it. So while sometimes the exposition as far as the and plus it's there to also bring together some disparate scenes that well, what's going on here? Well, I'll put a narration over it. We'll tie it all together. Like the fact
that Lugosi supposedly walks into traffic by walking off screen.
Right. A car ran and drove into his lawn.
Right.
But in general, that really struck me that while a lot of people probably would go, oh, look, there's all this narration that's kind of overwrought. It's not really, if you think about what was going on in silent film. And I don't know, viewing it this time, that really struck me as something very interesting.
What are some other visual moments? There are several, all of this is being built in a very tiny soundstage that Ed Wood, it was the Quality Pictures soundstage that he had. And, they've built a small graveyard that honestly, people make fun of the fact that sometimes the wooden crosses will wobble as people walk past them. Having said that, it looks great. I love it. I love this graveyard.
Yeah, I love the graveyard. I think it's a neat effect. I love how the high contrast. I wish, again, when I was saying there are a few things they could have done to make this film better and not expensive at all. I wish that they would have Ed Wood would have focused on the angles that he had and been consistent so that you're not super confused all the time. And also the lighting, if they could have used the high contrast light in the car scenes, in the street scenes, because a lot of times you'll see somebody in a car on the street and it'll be daylight, it'll be dusk or whatever, day for night, but it's clearly day. And then you kind of you drag over the camera, I guess, to Elvira or I was about to say Dracula.
Vampira.
I keep wanting to call her Elvira. Vampira, whatever, how you pronounce it. Or Bela Lugosi will be coming out of the woods, and it looks like from the angle, these cops or these people in the car should be able to see them now, because it should all be in front of, it should be you should be able to pan over and see them, but that's not how it is. That kind of stuff kept throwing me off, because I'd be like, wait, how are they not seeing that person if they just walked out what appears to be right to the left of where you are, and why are you in daylight and they're in the night? And those are not difficult things to fix. You could just, if you just pay a little bit more attention, you can have a few more
said
angles.
That, I can tell you, we just watched Kiss Me Deadly. That handles all of this day and night really well. But I will tell you, a lot of movies I've seen, not just in the 50s, but in the 60s and in the 70s, cannot get this day and night thing down.
Yeah.
Because it's hard. It's hard. And
this one, sometimes it looks like they're actually trying to make indoors look like outdoors, too. Especially some of the stuff where they're standing next to a car. It looks like they're in some sort of warehouse somewhere.
They are. Half the time they're filming the people standing inside of a car, up against a
they're in a studio.
Backdrop. Yeah,
right.
Next to,
so this is what I'm saying is, I think they should have just decided that's all we're going to do. We're only going to do.
But you can't do that. That's the problem. That's the problem with budget. Yeah. You shoot the scenes you can shoot outside, but
no, I'm just saying they shouldn't have shot anything outside.
Well, okay, but the Bela Lugosi stuff happened before all that stuff was not intended necessarily to be part.
No, I know, but it looks consistent with the rest of the stuff that Vampira and Tor do.
Oh no, you're talking about Lugosi's stand-in, his fake Shen.
No.
No,
When Lugosi walks out, there's several shots that are also. Oh, you're talking about when he's like in the field. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess you're right. I guess those maybe not. But then that could have been a different time of day is the thing. Like they could have had it be so that they have some stuff that's at this time of day and then some stuff that's at night. But I don't know. I'm just saying this is a small thing. And like, I get what you're saying that it's not as easy as it sounds. But it bothers me a lot when it just goes back and forth between the lighting or the angles.
Well, it makes it hard. Your brain
all.
is constantly readjusting.
Yeah,
going,
exactly.
All right, once again I've lost my bearings. Where are we? Until finally you either keep trying and get frustrated or you give up. The thing that I find hilarious and wonderful is the extremely loopy dialogue. It is so odd that I don't even know how to copy. I don't know how to fake this stuff. Truly,
well.
I mean, I don't.
The thing is, there's stuff that's really like interesting and lucid, and there's great like all the parts where there's a relationship. Hey, I'm concerned because I have to go. I still have to fly. I don't want to leave you here. All the stuff, and where they're talking to agents and all of that. And then there's like the real nuts and bolts, quote unquote, science stuff that gets really incomprehensible. And I've seen a lot of these movies, and this one, there's a lot, like the base plot of, we don't trust the Earth. You guys are going to blow up everybody. Like, you don't think you're going to blow up everybody.
Years ago.
But and that's interesting when they're internal to their spaceship that's orbiting the Earth or wherever it is. That's they have like the plans and stuff are good, but there's a bunch of parts where how the plot really is going to come together is such just strange, surreal jargon and I think that's where it loses a bunch of people, and that's a shame because there's a lot of really great stuff. And again, anytime Vampira is on the scene, it's like again, it makes me wish I wish there had somehow been some part of Lugosi and Vampira together in a sort of Addams Family like way, because I would definitely love to see more of that. He's just so incredibly striking in this movie, and the way they've shot her, that it's like almost a Caligari kind of.
Oh, she's wonderful. I mean,
like, it harkens back to that, and in some ways, I think that's definitely, hey, let's shoot this like this. It's magic. But yeah, the dialogue, there's a lot of good stuff, and there's some that's hampered by how good. The caliber of actor, is that's kind of all over the map. But I definitely agree with you that as it gets more into space jargon, it starts to fall apart a little bit.
I mean, you're right about space jargon, but it's weirder than that because, go ahead, Drew. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, to that point, it is kind of hard to know exactly what these aliens are on about. Like, they're upset about something. It seems to be that they feel like they're being ignored by the U.S. government, which...
Yeah. Oh, why? And that stuff's cool, too, because it is... Well, it's interesting because for a while they go, look, we knew you probably weren't going to understand us. And then finally we saw that you could. So we took advantage of that. So once we knew you could understand us, now that you have these speaking computers, I think, is that what they call them? I can't remember exactly, but translation
language computers.
That's right, language computers.
I think it was called the Robo Dicta.
Right, but they call it like language, like Julie's right.
Yes,
language computer.
It's basically the universal translator from Star
Trek.
Right.
Yes.
And so but then, like in Vast of Night, they talk about, hey, well, the government's covering all up. We can't panic people because there's aliens. And the aliens go, we tried to tell you, like, we're only trying to help you.
Right.
You're going to blow shit up because you can't seem to get your act together and you're dangerous, which, seems to be par for the course of the Earth. I don't think we haven't learned anything.
A good point. Like Vast of Night actually takes a lot of these same ideas and just sort of takes a kind of a sander to it and smooths it all out so it doesn't feel as wackadoo.
And we also have had the benefit of what the government actually does.
Yeah.
The
paranoia.
But that's, of the time, this is the 50s, we won the war, and it's removed, but it's interesting that you would have, you see it a decent amount, but he's, Wood's really trying for something here where, hey, even after we talk to aliens, or aliens are trying to contact us, we still don't know exactly what to do with that, and we certainly don't want to listen to them tell us how to run our Earth. And so the aliens are frustrated, so frustrated, in fact, that they need to raise the dead to scare the Earth into doing their bidding for our own good, which is really wacky and super cool. Like the base level of this, let's raise the dead to scare the Earthlings into not destroying themselves,
into not making a super bomb.
Man, that's kind of, if you had that log line, you didn't know anything about this movie, you could get some interest,
Well, also the fact that Ed Wood, who was a World War II veteran and had fought, but was also familiar with the unfairness and hypocrisy of society. His script here on the part of the Pentagon is super duper paranoid, right? Because like the colonel goes, I'm going to read a direct quote here because I just love the way Ed Wood's dialogue works. For a time, we tried to contact them by radio, but no response. Then they attacked a small town, I'll admit, but nevertheless, a town of people who died. And I love, first of all, aliens are killing people and the army is lying to you. That's a for 1959, that's a deep thought, that not the aliens killing people, but the fact that the army is not to be trusted. Because we last summer, all of us here spent all summer watching all of these movies about how, radioactivity was scary and making giant bugs that would tear things up. But the government was always on the side of right. They were doing stupid things that would turn bugs into giants. But in the end, they would kind of get their stuff together and they would save Chicago, whatever.
That little line of dialogue about small towns, like I just kind of wished he had tagged on, yeah, man, fuck small towns.
A small town, I'll admit.
But just see where he was going with that,
but even in that line,
those pumpkins.
To get back to Ed Wood's dialogue, which just blows my mind. So yeah, Tony, you're right. There's a scene where Eros, played by the inimitably named Dudley Manlove, describes how the Solaranite bomb works, and he does it by spending like 11 hours talking about what it would be like to pour gasoline on a basketball.
But to his credit, I totally understood.
Sure.
Which is more than I can say for most science things. Usually I'm like, what? Wait, what? No.
Fine. But it would have been fine for him to say it lights sunlight on fire. Fine. But what's wild is just the way that his dialogue will he'll say something and then it will loop around and say half of it again and then add a little bit more on. And I don't know if this is art on the part of Ed Wood, if this is and I'm not being sarcastic, I'm not being ironic. I mean, I don't know if this is poetry, if he's like Mamet and this is just how his characters talk or what. But let's see if I can find it. You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here. Or, it's an interesting thing when you consider the Earth people who can think are so frightened by those who cannot, the dead. I don't know. There's something about...
I like that he thought that we could think. We don't seem to be doing that well at it lately.
Those whom we're using cannot think. They are the dead, brought to simulated life by our electrode guns. That's a kind of magic. I mean, that's a fantastic...
consistency in how the electrode guns seem to work is interesting as well.
Well, that's the other thing. The aliens are totally
Jason,
they're terrible with it. Yeah, go ahead.
I will say, because I understand why you like the dialogue. Even though it's weird, because this, I will give you the same defense to use for this that I always use, because I love Stan Lee's dialogue. It's terrific. It is, to the point where maybe I've hurt my own career as a writer by emulating his dialogue so much.
Yeah.
But there's a particular cadence to it that I just love. And it doesn't sound like the way real people talk.
Oh God, no!
But it's still interesting to the ear when you say it all. I think you can say the same thing about this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, people love the way the characters in Buffy talk, but nobody talks that way. In fact, if they did, you'd want to smack them most of the
I know.
time.
It's too or
Like,
West Wing, where everybody in that universe sounds like Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah,
no matter
like you
who.
never like there's tons of stuff like that. Like I think again that's why it is a classic and why a lot of other movies have kind of fallen aside, because when you're in this world, you are in the kind of surreal, strange place where the cadence is that way, and
well, you're either on the Ed Wood train or you're not.
Right, yeah.
like a normal, maybe if you're wanting like the latest version of Hamlet or something, I don't know, something respectable, this is not going to be what you want. But if you're wanting a particular flavor, like this is it, like distilled, like, because it's one part 50s B movie, which it is.
Yeah.
But then it's also got this again, like sort of folkiness.
Well,
there's nothing else that really scratches this itch.
Yeah. The more we talk about it, the more I just kind of grind on it in my head. I think that is the best thing you can do. The sin would be to not have a voice. So this has a voice. And if you think of all of the cult movies that, even no matter how amateurish or, and good ones as well, right? Like they run the gamut. It doesn't have to be amateurs to be cult. That's for sure. There's tons of extremely well executed movies that just didn't capture their time. Right?
Iron Giant. I was thinking about that just today. That movie.
You think Iron Giant's a cult movie, though?
I think it's beloved now, but it was a failure when it came out.
Yeah, but there's a difference between that and being a cult movie. But okay. I think the biggest, if I were to define, if I were writing my thesis in a book, it would be that if you really want to attain that, you have to have a voice. And I think this movie definitely does, and a lot of similar movies that people gravitate towards also do, even though they may be really well executed and just not really, they didn't really find a place at the right place at the right time. But again, I gravitate towards that because I would rather have that than a bland piece of, again, commercial art that is beautiful but banal.
Or to give up and not try. Would the world be a better place if Ed Wood had been like, yeah, I guess I'm going to give up and go, open a nursery, and sell plants for the rest of my life? Would the world have been a better place?
It might have been easier on Ed Wood.
That's true.
He was a very troubled man. I think that's something that the as good as the Tim Burton movie is, it kind of glosses over the fact that he had a drinking problem, that he had a lot of demons.
Well, I think again that's how you get, for better or worse, how you get a lot of art that has a voice. And it's a really hard, like being a musician, being a person who creates, I think we all can understand. There's a fine line. You'll see some people whose trouble push them to make the things that we enjoy. And it's a really hard thing to fathom. Like, would you have wanted them to be happy if they didn't bring you the entertainment that you got? On the surface, yes, because if you have empathy and you want somebody to be happy and to be loved, but then you also you would sometimes trade that for a piece of art, and a piece of art that's pure in its final form. And that's a really tough dichotomy. It's something I think about a lot.
I also don't believe
a lot of musicians have drug problems that while they're in, and I think sometimes that can be a crutch, but part of that whole part of their lives leads to the creation of something. There's no good hard and fast. I don't know, but I think about it a lot when watching movies or listening to music and such.
Well, for what it's worth, I truly believe this. I don't know if the answer to Drew's question is clear. Like, if Ed Wood had not made movies, there is zero, from my limited understanding of drunks, there is limited. I'm not completely convinced that he would be less of a drunk if he was not a director. It just is, addicts are addicts, artists are artists, and some addicts are artists.
That might be true, but my point is that at times the nagging sense of that you are a failure, which he certainly did feel like often.
And we're going to touch on some of his later work when we continue this retrospective. We're gonna hit on one of his go-go dancer movies, which I'm sure we'll take a lot of joy from. But
and I'm not like judging,
Sure.
Of course.
Because I have for all my talk, like with the Bela Lugosi thing earlier, I am somebody that I feel like I relate a lot to Wood, is somebody that has struggled, to actually get my art out into the world and have it understood.
I think about it all the time,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of artists ask, am I this guy? Am I Ed Wood? Am I, am I somebody who keeps trying and doesn't know, like, where, I think a lot of us ask that.
Well, I mean, it's again the turn I watched when somebody recommended American Movie. They're making Coven, and
Yes.
a quarter of the way through it, it's kind of like, oh look, he's trying to make this thing, and then I just felt this deep kind of sorrow. I know that every documentary has to tell a story and it's edited a certain way, but I felt this in my heart. I just wanted him to succeed because he's pouring his heart into it, and he just doesn't have quite what it takes to make it work. And I mean, I myself am struggling. Like, we've been at the 6 months. The amount of music I have written pieces of, I could probably have written 3 albums, but I haven't even been able to complete, 1 album of anything and record it. And I know people who have made 2 or 3. I don't know where I'm at. I'm not successful at that.
Well, that's why on Twitter, a lot of people have been saying, we have to be, this is a weird time. So you can be, I'm not telling you particularly, Tony, but I mean, some people are throwing themselves into work and being overly productive, and others are burying themselves and not doing anything. And I think everything's acceptable because people are feeling really freaked out.
Sure.
And so it's a weird time. I think you can be forgiven.
I know, but it is hard when you look at, like objectively you understand, but then you go, wow. And I think that's what happens, especially like you have something that like this that has the spark of something really remarkable, but due to circumstances, it isn't them. It isn't day the earth stood still. And so what do? You continue making cool things. You continue to fight for what you want to create. But, in the wee hours, it eats at you.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, and I agree, I really do think that a lot of people who really see that, and I the more I talk about it, the more I think that's part of what cult movies, not everybody of course, but I think that's part of the appeal, and why we're spending this much time talking about a movie that has been maligned before, and where its good points are, and why it's worthy in the pantheon of movies that perhaps are better executed.
That's one of the reasons I was almost afraid to talk about it, that I said that I felt very dwarfed by talking about it, because it's difficult to figure out how to come at this work, because I've heard angry podcasts from people who are annoyed that people spend so much time loving this work, and they feel that's largely because of Tim Burton. And I've heard people are just making fun of it, and I don't know. It's a difficult work to talk about.
But I think the simple answer is because it entertains you.
Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line is just don't be a jerk about it.
Right.
I think that's the to me, that's the simplicity of it. Does it entertain you? Yeah. If it does, how it's up to you about how you. I'm not going to tell somebody how to watch something or listen to it. Again, I prefer a less ironic approach to works, and I hope that people do that. But not everybody does. But again, if life is short, who am I to tell you? Like, if you want to enjoy everything ironically, like maybe we won't hang out at parties, but I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. Well, that's also fine. But if it doesn't entertain you, like that's really the meat. Like, give yourself, let yourself be entertained and screw everybody else.
What's good about this movie, honestly, is if, as we've said, if a lot of movies, if the movie is a decent coffee table book version of itself, this is a success. The images of Tor Johnson coming out of the grave, Vampira coming through the trees, those compositions will be with us forever. They did not exist before this movie, and they did exist after. And that is a triumph on the part of Ed Wood. And given that we watch thousands and thousands of hours of movies, that's a lot. I mean, that's huge. The fact that afterwards you have this thing that can be on a t-shirt or on a poster, and who cares what the rest of the film is made up of, because you've got that immortal image of Vampire.
And that sort of gets Ed Wood posthumously, admittedly, the last laugh. Because he has a movie that's still being talked about in 2020, which how many quote unquote good movies came out the year this movie came out that are not being talked about. And so that goes back to the question of what actually makes something qualified to be good or bad. Although I think it is fair to call this, whether or not you think is good or bad is sort of irrelevant. It's besides the point. This is classic because of the stuff that we are talking about. Like, it has classic images of black and white 1950s horror movie. And, that's indisputable. You can say that it's a crappy movie, and I won't waste the energy fighting you on that. I don't have the bandwidth for it. But you can't take that away from Ed Wood. Like, he made something that is iconic. And even though it does have, hubcaps and paper plates spray painted silver to look like UFOs.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, I know what those are. Just for what it's worth, in case you're curious. They're model kits. They're just plastic flying saucer model kits that they bought at a hobby store, and the kit had a transparent plastic dome on top. They spray painted that silver, so the whole thing was opaque. That's the only change he made to the model kit. Other than that, it's just a model kit. He drilled holes in the top.
Well, at another point, he added like a block to it to look like something else. But yes. That's all it was.
So that's,
and then and then there's the change where there is the change where they set it on fire.
Right. There's a stunt model that blows up.
Stunt model. That's super. That was actually a good effect. So the fire was silly because there's no reason for it to be on fire. The inside is not on fire; it's just smoky. So why is the outside, which should presumably would be made of some kind of metal that would survive going through atmosphere, so it shouldn't be setting on fire, is on fire? That part annoyed the crap out of me. But I loved the explosion. I thought that was a great effect. Or it just kind of blows up into nothing. That was
Come on, Julia. What do you know about space metal?
Yeah, exactly.
What does any of us know about space metal? You can't say that doesn't catch on fire.
What terrible invaders these guys. I don't know how they drew this straw to have to invade, because their invasion is made up of like 3 aliens, and they're clearly, very upset and very emotional when they're attacking.
I think they're cool satin suits, though.
Oh gosh!
Although it's funny that there's like the
axe.
Eros. His one is like off of an Errol Flynn.
Oh no, that's not Eros. That's the great leader. Eros is Deadly Manlove.
Bunny
Breckenridge.
That's right.
The great leader has the
great leader
axe thing.
Yeah, it's like straight out of a.
By the way.
I love Bunny. I wish that Bunny were a person that I knew in real life. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Bunny was not even supposed to be in this movie. They met Bunny. Let's see, what did it say that they met Bunny? Trying to find now where that.
Bunny was independently wealthy, and was living with Paul.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. She was staying with. Yeah, she was staying with Paul Marco. Yeah. Who was the cop?
Right.
The cop. A classic.
Fantastic.
A classic. Like Kelton the cop seems like he should be an Abbott and Costello movie.
Mm-hmm.
He even talks like Costello. He does. And why am I always getting into these? Yeah, exactly. He's badass.
But I loved everything about Bunny. I loved how she uses her eyes. I kept thinking, I want to learn how to do that. Like, it's just not only the makeup, which is fabulous, but also just the constant kind of having like the sleepy eye look, where it's just every line is dramatic because of the eyes. Oh my gosh, I just love that.
All right.
No. I'm talking about the makeup. The makeup was fabulous too, but I'm saying how she uses her eyes in the acting. I just thought that was really great. Yes,
and the arms are always super dramatic. Like, go! Fabulous.
Yeah.
Just wonderful. So, and that I like having this actor here. This is not an actor that one presumes would get cast as the lead, alien in like, in any other film. So it just gives it this extra uniqueness. And
what's fascinating to me about the aliens in this too is they didn't, other than the sort of science fiction / Ren Fair outfits that they have on, They didn't give him antennas or, anything really funky looking about them, not even like pointed ears or something, like that. Like they're just people in future, quote unquote, futuristic looking outfits.
Yes.
Well, I think that's also, again, a big part of it's probably budget and then just how you do that.
Yeah.
But when you do that, I think they can blend in with people better, even though, they're wearing satiny outfits most of the time. But if they had to, they could. And also, whether it was intentional or not, if you don't make them too alien, it gives the impression that that humanity is part of all of it, right? Like, you're not so different from these aliens, only they're way ahead of us. So humanity, we all kind of look alike. Now, granted, part of this is just, I don't even know if this was thought of at the time, but I think it works that way. And that's how I kind of chose to approach it in my head, because everybody is, hey, look, it's like, oh, well, our blood's all the same color kind of thing. Who knows about them? Maybe their blood is green.
They believe in they believe in God and all this.
Well,
and
at least in as much as the Baptist church that funded it.
I didn't think about that. Well, and they've got some weird gender role stuff thrown in there. Like Eros goes, "Where I come from, women do not fight our battles." Like, what the hell? That was amazing.
That was horrible. That was horrible. He literally pushed her down, and she looks like shocked. It's almost like the actress wasn't expecting it, because she was like, "What the hell just happened? Why are you pushing me? I'm like actually defending you."
Like, don't make me electrogun you, buddy.
Oh, it's awful.
That's enough.
Of guns,
in my land, women
Did you talk about the cop who keeps pointing his gun at himself?
It's worth mentioning because I like to mention it. Very poor. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. Well, poor. What do you call it? Poor gun.
Trigger discipline.
Trigger discipline. That's right. Anyway, no. Apparently, he said that he was just doing it to see if Ed Wood would notice, and he never did.
Bullshit.
That's what he said. That's what he said.
That sounds like that sounds like somebody caught him and he was.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be true. It could be true, but.
Yep.
It's like when you see somebody online and they've got their finger on the trigger, which is the biggest. Like, anybody with gun training knows that it goes. Like, that's only if you're going to shoot somebody. Right. And then they go, well, it was, and they make excuses. But everybody who knows.
There's no excuse.
No, you need better training. That's really bad.
And a gentleman of his age should know better. I just feel that way. I feel there's almost zero chance that this guy did not serve in some capacity during one of the wars, having been born in 1913. So it just seems just extraordinarily just wrong that he would be handling that gun that way. But whatever. Anyway, in one of the remakes of it that Drew saw, which I didn't see, the gentleman who played that role did none of that stuff, and that was because the gun wrangler on set would not let him, because it was like, no, not even with a fake gun are you going to do this nonsense.
Yeah, and that's how it should be.
Right.
Like, I've had people, I've done mocap shoots where I've told people, don't swing that around. Like, just come on.
Just don't get in that habit. It's not a good habit to get in. Yeah.
Well, exactly. Also, if you're going to do that, to be honest with you, you're going to hold a gun. Anybody who's ever held a gun for real is going to know that while you're mocapping it, you look like somebody who's never held a gun. So if you're supposed to be a person with a gun who's like a space marine or something, guess what? That's going to go out the window, or we're going to have to clean it up so that you're not just waving things around. So if you even if it's fake, if you pretend it's not fake, that's how you train yourself, so that when you need to do a scene, whether it's mocap or actual on set, it's going to look more realistic than not.
Well, that must be this gentleman's excuse. Is, I know this is a prop gun, so I'm not worried about it. So yeah, sure, I'll scratch my temple with it and all this stuff. But that is not a good excuse. I mean, I'm sure that is his excuse, but it is not a good excuse.
No, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Because again, everybody's trying to make something good. Again, there's exceptions, but in general, everybody's there to make something worthwhile. Piece of art, or commercial art or whatever. So get on board.
Right. Well, that's well said.
Everybody can do their part. And if the part is hold a gun like a cop, be a police officer in a film that needs police officers and actually do your part to convey that.
Yeah. Well said.
Unless of course, like it's the Three Stooges, and that's the joke, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing. But Ed Wood in this movie, it wasn't meant to be a joke.
This character is not intended to be funny. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you might see that in an Abbott and Costello movie and go, oh, that crazy. That's some Keystone Cops kind of stuff. Yeah. Whereas I'm pretty sure in this movie, that was not the intent. Yeah. Whether he thought it was going to be the intent or not. And that's not for you to decide. That's for the director to decide.
I have to admit, I cannot these are guesses. I literally have no idea.
No, I know. I'm just saying that in general, when you think about creating something like this.
Absolutely.
And also ask. Like, I had a bit part in something where I carry a TV camera, but I had to ask, like, okay, like somebody else had actually done some shooting on. I've never held a TV camera in a way that I need to film people.
Right.
I've never had it in that real life capacity, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen it done, of course, but I'm going to ask somebody like, hey, so is this convincing or not? Because I don't want to be the weak link in a thing.
And you have to be willing to ask. Like, I agree. And I believe that I would do the same thing. That I would be, but the bottom line is that's the correct thing, is to go, hey, director man, I don't know the first thing about carrying one of these. I don't know the first thing about using this machine gun that you handed me. Because me personally, Jason, I have no idea how to use a machine gun. None. So so you got to go, listen, they didn't give us any training on this. So what do you want me to do with this thing?
I have a completely unrelated thought that just popped in my head. So this is Plan 9.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. What were plans 1 through 8?
That it's unclear. He does have a binder.
Why did no one? There's been 2 remakes of this. The real people dropped the ball. Would have been like, if I were doing anything that was related back to this movie, I would make a sequel called Plan 10 from Outer Space.
What? Are you sure that hasn't been done?
If 8 was pets, 7 was spaghetti, 6 was cars,
right?
3 was just weird fish stuff. So none of that works.
I love that idea. What are we going to do now? I don't know. Start with fish. Let's just see what happens. Stop making the solar ride.
Maybe that's connected to the Star Trek thing with the whales.
My apologies to Ed Wood. I just
no, it's gonna bug me now. I really want to know.
So let's talk for a moment about
there's your next short story. What were plans 1 through 8, and how
it depends,
and how was Earth so stupid to ignore it? Because that's the thing, is if they went through plans 1 through 8, they're like, well,
you know what?
We're still trying. Like, I mean, They Live could have been Plan 7 because we still didn't learn, right?
Plan 10 is actually Night of the Living Dead is actually a sequel, and that was Plan 10.
I can dig it. I can completely dig it.
Well, that Plan 10 is the sequel. Because that just. I mean, I guess it did stop society, so they went hardcore. Plan 10 was
going to come out of these guys.
They weren't fooling around anymore.
No, Plan 10 is scorched earth.
Yeah.
Plan 11 is Planet of the Apes. Little did we know.
So here's the thing. In theory, if Plan 9 from Outer Space is in the public domain, then in theory, Drew, you could go out and introduce Dudley Manlove as Eros into your comic book tomorrow because it's in the public domain. But this thing has radioactive vibes coming off of it. I wouldn't touch it for all the world, because to this day, the people are still fighting about whether it's in the public domain. I mean, it's probably in the public domain. Like Manos, The Hands of Fate, that's in the public domain. But this one, it seems to be, but since like 1980, since about the time that people started talking about it again, which is to say 20 years after it came out, some different people have been fighting for the copyright, including one of Ed Wood's widows, and including this other random dude who, for some reason, asserted that he had copyright. And I don't know how those guys who did the animated stuff and the remake and all that, I don't know how they did it. I don't know if they paid licensing.
That's part of how you find out. You find out who they had to pay.
Yes. Well, that would at least be a way to do it, is you could just pay somebody who you are afraid is going to sue you.
Well, I mean, that's how you find, like, that's usually like, who did you have to pay? Okay, I had to pay so-and-so, and they say that's That's the
Yeah.
closest to legality at that point that you can possibly.
Yeah, it's as good as it's going to get. I think there are still people who say, well, those guys are lying. They don't really have the copyright that should be in the public domain. But that's my point, is that any other public domain thing, It's a Wonderful Life, you could go out, or Night of the Living Dead's in the public domain. You could make a reverse Night of the Living Dead today. I could take all of the scenes and just reverse them and begin with Ben getting shot and end with the funeral.
Man.
And call it Memento of the Dead. And nobody could sue me.
Why haven't they combined those two movies together, though? It's a Wonderful Life and Night of the Living Dead.
Wow. See, you could do that tonight.
Public domains.
Public domain, baby.
So public domains, that'll be the name of the movie.
Yes.
Won't even be called either of those. Like, don't even be cagey about Night of the Living Wonderful Life. Like, just call it public
Night
domain.
of the Wonderful Life. Night of the Wonderful Dead. That's hilarious. I love it. No, Public Domains is a great name. That's a great name. I can't believe nobody's ever come up with a movie called Public Domains.
And you could go do that. It sounds like something you would at least need a Mac for, and I don't have one. But,
no, I mean, I have Premiere. I could easily take the time. Is it worth it to me to do that instead of working on my own, either music or music videos for my own? I don't know. Maybe.
Who knows? Yeah.
I mean, plenty of people have gotten famous for stuff that they, isn't what they, I guess they're.
But knowing you could is awesome. But Plan 9 from Outer Space, completely, it should be in the public domain, but they keep fighting about it. So anyway,
I do want to see now.
You were, hold on real quick before we move on for this.
Yeah.
You brought up the remake, and
yes. That's my question. Talk to me about them.
I don't want to spend an exuberant amount of time talking about it, but I will say the thing that because when I started to watch it in preparation for this, I was expecting something kind of more parodic, and it's a pretty, it's a different movie. They really play up more the sort of vampire / zombie stuff more than the original does. But it's a remake. Like, you can tell that people actually like Plan 9 from Outer Space, as opposed to like that. You don't think that the thing that I was kind of that I found refreshing about it is it was definitely made by people that enjoy this movie, instead of like we're making it to make fun of it or piss all over it, which would have been tiresome to me. I'm not saying that's the greatest thing I've ever seen, but it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Okay.
And so, I will give them credit for that.
How's their Vampira?
So they have Camille Keaton from I Spit on Your Grave playing the Vampira part.
Is it a joke or is it straight?
Oh, the fact that she's playing
no,
Vampira?
The movie. Is it like
it's got comedic elements, but it's also played straight a lot of times. Like it kind of veers the way a lot of indie horror does nowadays. I will say they said it on Halloween, which is a clever conceit to why there would be someone dressed like Dracula running around. And so I'll give them good credit. Like I was expected to kind of roll my eyes through the whole thing, but I ended up being pretty entertained by it, and I'm glad that they took the approach they did, which was a reverent approach. If one needs to be reverent to Plan 9 for Outer Space, there was a reverence to the original while still doing its own thing. Like, it's definitely not a shot for shot remake. There's a lot of other influences kind of thrown in there. There's a heavy Romero influence in it, and there's a lot of 80s stuff in there too. In fact, there's some quoting of Ghostbusters, which I like. But I dug it. I get it. I'm not going to say it's perfect. It's probably, I could, if somebody were to say, "Hey, Drew, you're completely wrong about that Plan 9 from Outer Space remake. It was bullshit," I'd be like, okay, fair.
And this is the one called Plan 9.
Just right? Called Plan 9. And it's on, I believe, Prime is where I watched it. And
I want to say that's where I saw it.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it, but
I could see, like I said, the way it was advertised as like the movie that Ed Wood wished he made. Like I was expecting to groan my way through the whole thing, but it folded neatly into a kind of indie horror movie that, you know, I enjoy, you know, like while my expectations were pretty low. So, and again, I'll just cut off the discussion of it right there because I don't want to divulge too much from the original.
This is fascinating. Okay, well, I'm totally interested in that. And you said there was also an animated remake.
There's an animated one that I found on YouTube. And I don't know if it ever got our official release.
It's on the Roku as well because I noticed that it was there.
It is not. That one was painful to get through because it is a shot for shot remake with CGI. And I think they might have been trying because there was Night of the Living Dead Reanimated, which came out in like the aughts and, you know, had some kind of buzz about that, which was an animated version of Night of the Living Dead.
See, the way to do that would be to animate with the original soundtrack instead of just having the whole thing re-recorded, because that's no fun. But somehow you do something clever using the original. That's interesting to me. Maybe I'm the opposite.
I personally don't like it very much when remakes are too close to the. I want there to be some differences.
So you're a fan of the 1980s Blob, then?
I like the 1980s Blob a lot.
I like that movie a lot.
Underrated remake, actually.
I'm not saying it's bad. I actually haven't seen it since the 80s, so I don't remember.
Oh, man. You owe it to yourself if you can get the Shout Factory one. That one's nice.
That's a good flick. I think that's a deeply underrated movie, and I like there to be enough reverence for the original while also being enough of its own thing to where I don't feel like I'm just watching the same, because I don't want to watch the same film again. You know, like that's why I kind of like. There's the Werner Herzog, who's a filmmaker I respect, but I kind of snoozed through his Nosferatu remake. It's a little too reverent. If you get what I'm saying.
Note from the editor, we have an episode on that very movie. If you want to listen to it.
But that one's a little too reverent for my taste.
It's like a good cover tune, right? You kind of do want to hear what the band is bringing to the table.
Yes, exactly. And I think this was enough of that. I'm not going to say it's great, but it was pretty decent. But now I want to talk about Bela Lugosi.
All right, please.
Before we veer too far off.
We should, because we haven't, but we should add it because I think we're about ready for our final thoughts, but we should talk a little bit about Bela Lugosi. I told you what Stephen King said, which is that he felt like Bela Lugosi was a sick man and that Ed Wood sullied Lugosi's reputation and took advantage of him and shouldn't be celebrated for that. So Stephen King got up on the wrong side of the bed. He also said some other stuff in Danse Macabre that he's taken back. Like he said that fantasy books suck, but he ended up writing fantasy books in the end. So we shouldn't necessarily hold Stephen King to what he had to say 40 years ago. But anyway, that was what he had to say.
Well, you know, cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Right.
But I'm sorry, Stephen King, if you hear this, know that I love you and don't don't send Pennywise to eat me or something.
Also, if you're hearing this, can Jason interview you for his podcast?
You know, like I'm not as salty about it as that, but I love Bela. We did a whole retrospective on Bela Lugosi. If you want to hear the fandom in my voice, go listen to that or listen to the Son of Frankenstein episode. Like, I think Bela Lugosi was an amazing actor that is completely unappreciated by a lot of modern horror fans because he has this reputation for being cheesy because of this movie in particular, which he's not actually in. He's basically what Ed Wood was actually really talented is he was very talented at editing because of the way he uses stock footage and the way he used this like edited footage of Bela Lugosi. And that does bug me because I think it keeps people from looking at stuff like White Zombie or Dracula or Son of Frankenstein or The Raven, all these movies where Bela Lugosi is amazing in them, and they're like, oh, he was the guy that was in all those Ed Wood movies, and there's so much more to his career, and I'm just
Do you think
frustrated by that.
Do you think that are the people? How do I put this correctly? I'm just going to throw it out there, and then I hope people understand. Do you think that's the right people who are going to get it anyway? Because I think somebody who is going to go, "Oh, look, he was in these Ed Wood movies. He sucks," aren't ever going to get it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, it does limit it. But I also think if that is your capacity to enjoy and make film a part of yourself, I don't know if you're ever gonna get it. Maybe. I know that sounds kind of bleak, and I hope people understand where I'm coming from.
No, I mean that's cool. I mean, I you're kind of saying, there's always going to be people who are going to zoom right past Lugosi and not investigate. And
I know people who they don't like a certain kind of music because they heard some song and they're like, I don't like that.
Right.
And you can go, well, and some people you can go, hey, well, that's not here's some bands, and they're either going to go, okay, cool, or they're going to go, that's not for me. I think that, if all metal is hair metal and that's what you think of it, then it's cool if you don't like it. I'm not going to tell you have to, and I'm not going to pursue it very, but that I think there's X amount of people who are just never going to engage in that conversation.
You're not entirely wrong. However, I have had conversations with people that it's kind of like, so the thing that you're correct about is, like, first of all, Bela Lugosi was an actor and he appeared in lots of films throughout his career, and not all of them were not all of them were even as memorable as this one. Like, he did a lot of Poverty Row, horror movies.
Yes.
Like, I've definitely watched
yes.
watched Plan 9 more than I've watched the Bowery Boys meet Brooklyn Gorilla, but I've definitely been at horror conventions talking about golden age horror with people, and there's the attitude that you have, like Karloff, and some of this has to do with the Tim Burton film that like, Karloff was the good actor and Lugosi was the bad actor because he was in Ed Wood films, but he was in the Ed Wood movies when he was on the tail end of his life and he needed money, and it's there's some circumstantial stuff.
Well, I'm sure that's what King, what Jason's talking about why King perhaps got so frustrated is even if let's give people the benefit of the doubt, even if you meant well, like, hey, here's an actor I really like, I'm going to pay him some money, it may be hard to get the performance I want because he's older, he has problems. But even if that's your intent, it's still up to you to make sure that isn't exploitative.
Yeah.
And that maybe, and you can have the best intentions as well. But when you're creating art, a lot of people, it is hard because nobody's going to believe in the thing that you're creating more than you do. I'm sure, Drew, you are keenly aware as an independent creator.
Yeah.
It simply does, it will never register more than how you feel about it. If it's your creation that you've poured your heart and soul into. So somebody could also go, even if he meant well, Ed Wood still has to create a movie. And by no means is this an excuse, but I'm saying that humans don't necessarily even see that because we all put blinders on and like, so I don't know the circumstances. It's all over the map. But I mean, it is a shame that you're having those conversations and they're colored by, they're also, again, that's colored by history, how history is written, right?
Well, that's the thing. I would much rather Lugosi be remembered for Dracula, which I guess he is, but something like The Raven or White Zombie, like the stuff that I would consider him at his high point.
Sure.
I mean, but here's the thing to me when I agree with you, but I think there's only really one way to do that, right? Is just to champion it in the way that we're doing.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing that people can relate to, and to not be a jerk about it, right? Because you could be like, screw you, man, Lugosi's the real thing, and like really be an ass about it, right?
Sure.
Some people do, because I had a friend who kind of had something like that explode on him recently, where he called out a celebrity and talked about another celebrity, and this person just freaked out. It was weird. Everybody's under duress, but also, the way you do that is is to say again, and I think how you approach it is as important, because even like my thing about metal, like I'm not going to tell somebody like, well, I can't believe you don't even like this. I'm angry because you don't. Sure, you can suggest and you can use your voice to elevate what you think is right. And I think, man, that's about all you can do. But it is frustrating when you know that something is more worthy, or that a person's life has been narrowed to that extent because of things that happened after, especially like in this case, is after their death. Like, so there's all this stuff about Universal Horror, and there's all this stuff about Lugosi's legacy. But then what happens when you're put in the worst movie of all time in a book? Well, that colors thing. As much as I also like, I'm with you, as much as I like the Ed Wood movie, that colors things for people who maybe haven't delved as deeply into a legacy.
I just want to point out there, but it does Martin Landau won an Oscar for playing
but it does turn people. Some people are going to write that off, and other people are going to go, man, I need to find out more about this. Like, that's a fascinating character. Maybe I didn't know. And some people are...
Well, the Martin Landau Bela Lugosi may or may not have had much in common with the real... That's up to a lot of scrutiny. It is an amazing performance. And look, I'm sure we're going to talk about the Ed Wood movie more as we go through these films. But I think that the movie is like, that was a touchstone movie. When I saw it as a kid, like that when it was a good movie for anybody who felt like they were a misfit, because it is a movie about misfits. So I think I don't want to disparage that movie too much, even though I am trying to contextualize kind of the grief that it is given me as a fan who grew up with the Universal monsters and Bela Lugosi in particular.
Yep. No, you're right. So this is definitely worth a much deeper discussion that I think could spill over into the Facebook page, because there's so many
into the wee hours of the morning.
Well, that too, but I mean, there's so many directions to come at this from. It's like, is the attention that Martin Landau brought to Lugosi good because of all the dignity that Landau brought, or bad because of some of the frailty? Do people still remember Dracula? Does Plan 9 muddy people's memory of the great performances like in Son of Frankenstein? Impossible to answer in the time.
Well, it's different for different people. I mean, it's not. There's not one answer to those questions. Every question can be yes or no depending on the person.
Yep. I definitely recommend Dance Macabre, by the way, because that was good. It was, and again, quite old, and I'm sure that King would say, "Oh yeah, I'd changed my mind about half the stuff I said," but it is a super good book. So, gosh, we did not walk our way through the plot of this film. Not that it really matters.
There's a plot.
Yeah, how would you do that? I will stand by my original statement of that this is a difficult movie to review.
Yes,
what it is.
But I'm perfectly happy with the conversation. I think that we should go ahead and get our final thoughts, and then we are going to be back next week with yet more. And I think in comparing and contrasting with Bride of the Monster, we are going to have opportunities to I was thinking more about Plan 9, and we'll come back. But for now, what are some final thoughts? I think we started, it was Julia, Tony, Drew, and then I'll go. So, Julia, we have discussed Plan 9, and you have now spent more time with Plan 9 than you possibly ever imagined that you would. Drew, even more, because he watched a couple of remakes. So what are your final thoughts?
Well, it's interesting. We watched a couple of documentaries, and we watched some, different things and read about it. But I've actually learned a lot just listening to you guys talk about sort of how you look at work and whether, what to appreciate. What I don't know. It's really interesting. I've mostly just been thinking about it as I've been listening to you guys. I think that the story of Ed Wood, I think you're right that we should talk about the film itself and the guy and the person, his life more as we go through this, because it's painful and yet also beautiful to see how much of himself he put into all his projects, and how really he's just laying himself out there. And it's beautiful in that I think part of him is I don't really care what people think about it, but the other part of them is like, oh, but I really want them to appreciate it and love it like I do, and so it really is kind of sad. But yeah, it's been really interesting. I just wanted to add the note that apparently Vampira, not Elvira, would get dressed and put her makeup on at home and then take the bus to work, which I think is a fantastic detail, because can you just imagine how awesome it is to be on the bus?
Yes.
And Vampira gets on. Anyway, I just think that's cool. She's awesome.
She's great, by the way. Oh, so good.
She was really interesting. What was the chick's name?
In the documentary that you're talking about.
The documentary, yeah.
Saucers Over Hollywood.
But what was the woman's name who was one of, was she the one who is played by Sarah Jessica Parker in the movie, the one that was one of his ex-wives, one of his wives?
I don't recall.
Anyway,
I really don't recall.
That documentary is going to be one of my endorsements, I guess, because it's very amusing and interesting to hear all these anecdotes about what it was like to make the film and everything, and what it was like to know these people. And the wife of Ed Wood is just a fantastically, I don't even know what the word is. She's new agey, but I'm new agey. She's like way past me. Like she's like an outer stratosphere new agey. I just love her. I was like, you're just so bizarre and interesting. Anyway, everybody in this documentary just has such wonderful things to add. So it's for sure.
And that film's from 1992, so everybody's still alive. I mean,
Forrest J. Ackerman, who I've talked about before, that we met, is in here a few times. Yeah, I've told you guys the story that that when we met him, he was talking to us and he was like, "This is the ring that Bela Lugosi wore in Dracula," and he gave it to me. And then, like a few weeks later, we read an article about him, and it said he's always trying to pick up young women by telling them how he wears Bela Lugosi's Dracula ring.
Nice.
And at this point, I was a young woman, so I'm going to take that as flatter. It has something to be flattered by.
Sure.
Anyway, it's pretty funny. But yeah, so it's fun documentary. I think people will enjoy after watching this film again. Watching that. Yeah.
Awesome. It was Dolores Fuller, by the way, who I believe was in Glen or Glenda. So, Tony, final thoughts on Plan 9 from Outer Space.
I find this film to be highly entertaining, warts and all. I think no matter where you fall on if you enjoy it or if you just think it's too cheesy and campy, its legacy has lived on far past what I think many, many, many movies of bigger budget and perhaps even more stellar actors have. It's surpassed all of that. And I think, again, it's because of a singular vision. Some people may say it's flawed. Other people may say genius. I mean, that's up to us to interpret art, like we've talked about.
Yeah.
But I thoroughly enjoy the movie. I probably don't watch it enough. I think, for better or worse, it epitomizes exactly like this era of low budget filmmaking and sci-fi, and kind of throwing something to the wall and see what all sticks. It certainly has influenced the goth scene, its imagery. I would say that if you looked at, I don't know, just think about Mad and Cracked magazine alone, how many vampire type images are in that you grew up with. Just anytime a horror pantheon was drawn, there's some facsimile of a Tor Johnson zombie and a vampire look-alike or straight up lift. So it's how saucers do this kind of, there's tons of other movies that have similar aliens and what future what advanced societies are like, right? Both in other movies and in parody. So the fact that we spent this much time talking about it alone shows that something is there,
right?
Right? I mean, there's something undeniable about why we come back to certain movies. And as far as leaving a legacy behind, I mean, you and I have a book that's now 2 books that are out of print. Like, you can't buy copies from the publisher anymore. And I have people go all the time like, what? Oh, that's cool. You did a comic? Or I remember that. I read that whenever, right?
Right.
We can be so lucky if somebody finally remembers something we've created in this way. So
yeah,
I say check it out and let your heart take you where it's going to take you.
Very good. That's beautiful. Mr. Drew?
I mean, I don't think I'm going to say anything too different. I that this is a Rorschach test of a film.
Yeah.
I myself definitely lean towards the I enjoy it side of things. And I think it's perfectly valid if you want to watch it and snicker. It's perfectly valid if you watch it, kind of like how I do. I watch it as a piece of folk art. Somebody trying to do their best approximation of a universal horror film with the money you had to work with. And I just think it's interesting as that. I wish people could approach it with that kind of attitude more. Because as we've mentioned, every film that's made, people are just trying to do the best they can. Like people don't really go out of their way to make something bad most of the time. And as I've gotten older, I tend to look at things more like that. Whereas when I was a kid, I definitely fell more into the mystery science theater, let's point and laugh kind of thing. And I don't think there's anything. Certainly, a lot of people have gotten into horror and sci-fi through that, but I actually like to look at things now more analytically and go, okay, what was this person thinking about when they made this weird movie? And that's kind of where we met with this one.
Yeah, and I think you're correct. And again, it's not my position whenever we talk through this podcast to tell you how to enjoy film. I can only tell you how I approach it and how I think my opinions on what I think is the best approach. So again, man, it's a weird world. I don't want to tell you. I don't know. I don't have the answer. So I'm with you in that early on, I probably would have snickered. And now I tend to cling to those weird misfits because I feel empathy.
I have nothing that I could add to that. I'm just very thankful for this conversation. It's been really great, and I can't wait to keep going with the other Ed Wood pieces that we're gonna do. Thank you, guys. Let's do endorsements. Whatever we've been watching, listening to that we would like to bring the world to. Julia, you already mentioned the first one, which was the 1992 documentary, Flying Saucers Over Hollywood, which included interviews with people like Dolores Fuller and so forth. Is that where you want to stick, or do you have anything else that you want to
I think that I meant that one of you or I mentioned cruise ship killers in a previous episode, but I want to, regardless, I want to say that one again, because we are going to. I've managed to what's the word when you invite yourself to something? I managed to get myself added to this to Jason's interview with with J.H. Moncrief coming up soon, and I'm super excited because I desperately wanted to talk to her. We are really obsessed with this show Cruise Ship Killers, where it's a true crime sort of, or not just true crime, but mostly true crime.
It's a true crime show. Yes,
it is a true crime show, but not everything is a crime. Like some of the times, the people just, who knows what happened to them? They had an accident, they disappeared, whatever. But the point is, it's basically a true crime show about people who either die or meet some other kind of like they disappear or whatever happens to them on a cruise ship. And like sometimes they know what happened. Sometimes it's really frustrating because the episode ends and they're like, and to this day, we have no idea what happened to this person. You're like, but that's so frustrating. Anyway, one of the experts that they interview a lot on the show is named J.H. Moncrief, and we're going to talk with her for the podcast. So I'm excited about that.
Sometime in the middle of the week.
In preparation for that, you guys should watch some of these episodes. I believe it is on, what's the channel called now? It used to be called one thing, and now it's called something else.
It used to be called Justice, and now it's called the True Crime Network.
True Crime Network, yeah.
Yeah. Just to give you an idea of the classy goings on inside Julia and Jason's house.
This is one of the classier things. No, kidding. We actually watch better things sometimes. But this is good. It's not bad at all. It's like well done. Like it's really well done.
Very well done. It is totally well done. But you know what? You like what you like. I am addicted to this show. So it's a lot of fun. And J.H. Moncrief is a thriller writer. So it's going to be super exciting to hear her talk about how she approached, what a neat opportunity it was to sort of be the voice of this show. So that'll be cool. Thank you, Julia. And by the way, that documentary you talked about, Flying Saucers Over Hollywood, on YouTube, and I think that's the only place that you could find it.
Excellent.
So yeah, Tony, what about you?
So I didn't really have anything, and the more we talked, the more I started thinking about other like outsider art influencers, that kind of stuff. And so I am going to recommend a documentary from 2010 called The Weird World of Blowfly, about a musician, one of the progenitors of rap. It's crazy. Like this person, he was a person who was respected, kind of underground, and then kind of had a resurgence. And I found his documentary to be fascinating. If I remember correctly, he's since passed. But The Weird World of Blowfly, I think it's on Amazon Prime. It's from 2010, 2011. And I just think of it just struck me, like I'm really interested in these stories of, here's a person who influenced a lot of things, but was unsung for a lot. He has this insane flamboyant costumes he's worn. His presence is pretty. He's one of those people who you see him off stage, he's one way, and then once he's on stage as this character, is where he really shines. And I think talking about kind of those influences and just made me think of that documentary. So again, any of these, your mileage may vary, but it made me kind of want to watch it again because I found it kind of fascinating. I found Blowfly, his real name, Clarence Reed, to be just fascinating. So that's going to be my endorsement because I don't really have much else after.
I think that's great. Mr. Drew, what about you?
So my first endorsement relates very much to what we're talking about and what we're going to be talking about. There is a book from 1994 called Ed Wood, Nightmare of Ecstasy, The Life and Art of Edward D. Wood Jr. Yeah, that's a long title. It's by Rudolph Gray. It's what a lot of the stuff in the Tim Burton movie comes from, but you actually learn a lot more nuanced stuff about Ed Wood and his relationship with Bela Lugosi and his relationship with all the people that were regulars in his filmmaking world. Plus, you learn more about his life before and after the events of the film. It's a really good book if you're interested in, cult filmmaking and low budget filmmaking in particular. You can still get it used on Amazon. It's only $24.95, which isn't too bad for a book that's not been in print for several years. And I, again, highly recommend it. Something that's a little cheaper, but also fun. I discovered that there is a Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter comic book by Dan Abnett and Tom Mandrake. You can get Titan Comics a few years back, but I just got it on Comixology, and it was on sale less than $10. And I haven't finished it, but so far it is awesome. Like, it's the sequel that I wish that we had gotten, because Kronos was definitely worthy of a sequel. And this really has the style of the movie, but it's much bigger because of course it's a comic book. And there's something cool kind of seeing the world of Kronos like writ large, and Tom Mandrake's art just is really like awesome and gothic and appropriately Hammer-ish, but also its own thing. And I don't know, I'm a big fan of the movie, and so to see this continuation done was really cool to see.
That's pretty great.
I guess you're kind of amazed we've never reviewed that movie, now that I'm saying it. Or maybe we haven't, I just don't remember it. But I go to remember doing Captain Kronos. But terrific comic book, terrific continuation of the films, and I just can't recommend it if you're a Hammer fan at all. Like, I can't recommend this highly enough, and it's very easy to find on Comixology.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that recommendation. That sounds like something that'd be fun to read in October. For my part, so one thing that I just wanted to mention is last week we were talking about Darren McGavin's hairpiece, and one of the listeners, our good friend Sean Brady, pointed out, he goes, "You don't want a hairpiece, Jason. What you want to get is a hat." And I was thinking, what hat? Like, what if you're a balding, blonde-ish guy like me? What hat? Is it a pork pie hat? Like, is that?
I would
do
call that
want-
a trilby.
I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe Darren McGavin. My point is, what hat should I get? So, if anybody knows what hat Jason
you don't
should
just
wear.
want to do. You just don't want to, go straight to the Kolchak hat.
No, I mean that's a straw hat. It's not, unless
you want
I'm
something
auditioning for the Music Man. I don't think that's going to suit me.
You want a distinctly Henderson hat.
Yeah, I just don't know.
Bring
what
it back around, man. Texan through and through, 10-gallon hat.
Yeah, that's probably the answer. Yes.
Lean into it, man.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
And when you're interviewed, lean into add the drawl back. It was
Yes.
great. Lots of pop.
One thing I wanted to bring to everybody's attention, because I am super duper stoked about this. We have a new Castle of Horror anthology coming up on it's coming out October 13th. And on that same date, we're going to have a live Zoom event with all the authors of the Castle of Horror anthology. But this new one is Castle of Horror Anthology Volume 4, Women Running from Houses. And I am so stoked to have people talking about this. It is all stories that are patterned after or commenting on or some way related to Gothic, and every story has at least a woman and a house. And I am just, I don't know. This is I think this is the funnest collection that we've done so far. And we've gotten such great responses to it that we may very well do more. I mean, this time next year, we may have, Volume 6, more women running from houses. Or maybe it'll be called Women Running from More Houses. I don't know. But we're probably going to do more. So anyway, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, just check that out. That was the end of my sentence. Yeah.
So one thing that I find fascinating is the fact that, Jim Towns has a story in this, right?
Yes, he does. Yeah.
So it does my heart good. This is one of those things that feels self-serving, but is awesome. Since I've known Jim since college.
Oh, really?
And we had sort of lost touch. Yeah, we hung out all the time in college. And then we kind of lost touch, and things are dumb in college, and I don't know why. But it was only over the last few years that we really kind of reconnected. So the fact that a friend of mine from before you and I knew each other is now part of a thing, I don't know. That's just...
Yeah, it's cool,
that's
isn't
cool
it?
to me. That's so cool because he's worked really hard. He's done really cool stuff, and he's a good dude. I wish we had never really lost touch for the period that we did, but life is weird and stupid. But the fact that when I saw, he's like, "Hey, I'm going to be part of this thing," and then it started kind of with the interview you guys did together.
Yes.
And then
I interviewed him for a book that he did about kind of just haunted stories. And,
right.
But
it's cool to me, since why we get together in this way is because of friendship at the core.
Yeah.
Our friendship extends to loving horror movies and all us together, and roping Julia into liking horror movies. But I just thought it's so strange and so cool that has kind of looped back around, because this is several decades worth of us having known each other.
Yeah.
Life is strange in that way, and I think it's pretty awesome.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. And by the way, his story is wonderful. It's really great, and it's the only one that takes place in 1972, which puts it smack dab in the center of the literary era that we're writing about. So it's unique in that way. Very good.
I'm stupid and I have an idea and I didn't write it. So
I'm telling you, man, because there are several people who are like, listen, I wanted to get one together. I can think of 3 right now who said I wanted to get one together, but life's been weird. And I'm telling you, we're going to do more Women Running for Houses. We are. Cool. I promise. Probably next year. So, yeah. Because we're doing one of these collections now, every 6 months. And so I don't know what the theme of the next one will be. We'll definitely do another Gothic. Anyway, and that's it. But so look for that. Women Running from Houses, pre-order now. Be at the live thing. We want to see you. It means a lot, and we value every reader. All right. We will be back next week. I think it's Bride of the Monster next week. I know it's more Ed Wood. I think it's Bride of the Monster. And then the week after that, I think it's Orgy of the Dead, which I'm super excited about. Go-Go Zombies. That is going to be so fun. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful and art-infused evening. And I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Night.
Night.